colleagues, thank you so much for availing yourself for this session. We've just arranged with the hotel because the lunch finishes at 2. So we've arranged that they give us an hour. So we're going to allow Chairperson to come in and then up until 2 o'clock. And then at 2, we take a break, we go for lunch. And then by 2:30, we are back. And then Chairperson will proceed. But let me just few points that the reason why we are here is because you'll recall that last year we did the 2021 strategy as a board. But then we realized that if we look at the strategy that we have, which is 2020, 2021, 2024, 2025, it does not reflect, does not talk to the vision of the board, which is renew, grow, and transform. Hence, then we said, let us now do a document that will now speak to this slogan of renewing, growing, and transforming boxing. That's why we are here today. And the presentation from the chairperson is there to give us the marching order to say, now going forward, what is it that we need to focus on as Boxing South Africa to ensure that we do achieve the vision of renewing, growing, and transforming Boxing South Africa. So without wasting further time, I will allow the chairperson to come forward, and this session will be recorded. We're going to upload this session on Boxing South Africa, YouTube TV, and all other media platforms that we might have. So, Chairperson, over to you.
I will just help us with some thoughts on the work that we need to do over the next few years. So that's what I will basically. I will start with some reflections, I also, as I was working on this, I took into account in terms of how the program is structured. So mine is to just give an some kind of a helicopter strategic framework, if you like, strategic framework, strategic thinking. Of course, I'm glad that you are recording this job, because the presentation doesn't have much meat. The meat will only come from my head, So it's got pointers. So I think we've done quite a lot of work around how the sport has evolved, and I tried to say a lot about this during the road shows. But I think, Mr. Soto, I think that history needs to be recorded. I don't think that it is properly recorded. From the 50s, the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, unification, I think we do need to do that record, Mandla. When was Lois Omja? Fortunately, he has written a book now. When was Lois Omja a national middleweight champion, and so on? So I do think that we need to record the evolution of the sport of boxing, and probably you can frame it. It depends how you would want to frame it. You can frame it in the manner in which I have done, and I think the discussion that we just had with the promoters was also a reflection of this history. For instance, if we're saying early 90s, 90s and early 2000 were the golden years of boxing. How do you characterize that? You've got that in some of your slides. At a point where in the 90s we had how many world champions? Yeah, we had about 9 world champions. Exactly. That type of So that when you say these were the golden years, we are able to then say they were golden years because of 1, 2, 3, and then now, what is the state? Decline in the late 2000s up till now. What are the indicators? What were the indicators of decline? For instance, golden years, you were number 2 sport. At some point, you were one of the most popular sport, in the country. So that history as a source of inspiration, and there's something that says to us, you've got to do something. What is our characterization of a self-destruction? For almost 15 years. You've had times. Ubedla told me at some point some of the discussion they had when he was in the board. All those things when you were at the board, not finishing his term of office. Where we find ourselves now, where we've got to go to stand for certain information, where you've got an office that is really an empty shell in terms of this history of the sport, in terms of its records and so on, and the fact that we've got to now reconstruct basically the sport of boxing, because that's where we are. We are beginning a reconstruction phase, what we call renewal. We're beginning a reconstruction phase of the sport of boxing out of self-destruction. It's quite good when you hear promoters themselves saying, hey, the gates are so wide open, so everyone can come in. The rules of entry need to be revisited. So as I was saying, we are now in this phase wherein we have backed, the renewal agenda to deal with all what I've just spoken about. But it's very important for us to understand what has been the source of decline. It's very important because we must not misdiagnose the problem. We must not misdiagnose the problem, and then we've got to take into account what has been the intervening factors, in the period, like things that I was talking about in the earlier meeting, like the commercialization of the sport. I think we need to sophisticate our understanding as you are in higher education sport. I think we need to sophisticate our understanding of the landscape of sport, nationally, internationally. The role of technology, for instance, in sport. The landscape of broadcasting. I think we spoke about this at the joint strategy session. The landscape of broadcasting, of media. Just the total landscape of the media. Yes, broadcasting, television, but you also have got now your YouTube TV, all these innovations that are happening, within the sport. What do they mean? So that then we proffer an appropriate strategic response to the totality of sport media, if you like, as opposed to just looking at it now through the lens of broadcasting, important that as it is, but we've got to have. That's why I was talking about us having a posture around media, broadcasting, and so on, so that then, as we engage our different media institutions, we engage from that strategic posture, as opposed to a piecemeal responsive approach. So I do think that I know that we'll have a time to discuss this as I know that you have prepared a presentation, so we'll deal with it at that point. But again, you've got now this thing called celebrity boxing and boxing exhibitions. So I do think that, Betla, our framework must be clear. We must clearly define what is celebrity boxing and what is our approach to it. What is exhibition? What is boxing exhibition? So in other words, we must provide leadership to the country in response to these innovations, so that as they come, we provide that necessary leadership. So that's what I'm talking about this changing nature of sport, issues of financialization. But I know, I'm sure you've had an opportunity to read this. It's a pity that I know that he had said he had a little commitment, Soren. So, for instance, the joint strategy session is very clear about what we need to do around issues of investments and things like that. So we've got to then say tomorrow, Jobe, out of that, what is it that we're going to do? What is it that we would want to prioritize? I've talked to issues of innovation, creatives, packaging and repackaging, the presentation of the sport, and nowadays. And again, in case I forget when we discuss the MOU with SAPC, of course now, I mean, I've not read the MOU, but part of what I want us to think about, colleagues, for instance, with regards to the role of legends. When we engage these broadcasting networks, how do we weave in some of the erstwhile boxers, for instance? I will be biased to boxers, not necessarily officials, important as they may be. How do we weave in some of the erstwhile boxers as commentators, for instance? In now SAPC will be busy. We're starting with 24. Is it 24? No? 24 tournaments. We're going to 52 interest. So meaning that every week you will have interest time. Every week you'll have a tournament. So what then becomes a developmental role of SAPC apart from broadcasting? So I'm saying our discussion around broadcasting has got to be that broad, to say, we've got to ask ourselves, who are the commentators? Who are the commentators? What is their background? And influence, who are the commentators? As part of addressing this issue of legacy. This issue of the challenge of what then becomes the role of our boxers post their active boxing life. Of course, there would be criteria and all of that that are developed around that, so that you don't only have, for instance, Brian Mitchell, on SuperSport, who's doing commentary. Because I mean, you can do that work part time, just like what Bongani does. You don't necessarily have to be full time, but just as a way of ensuring that our boxers a benefit, out of this. Now I've asked Upedla to generate for us a report out of the boxing, out of the national road shows. So what is here? I've just picked on what I think are the instructive learnings, from the national road shows, without getting into the nitty-gritties. I've asked Upedla to pick takeaways from the National Roadshow, as well as key messages, takeaways and key messages, from the national roadshows. But from where I'm seated, I think there is a lot of goodwill from the country, particularly from the licenses. Overall, there is a lot of goodwill. So I think our task, therefore, now, Jobe, is harnessing that goodwill, as you have seen it today in this meeting. So how do we then harness that goodwill? Of course, there is hunger for change. People want to see these things that we said we needed to do done, as you have heard here, time frames, for instance. We want time frames. Now, you'll present issues of the organogram and all of that. But I just want to say, personally, I'm going to be, and this is not a threat, colleagues, I'm going to be very much impatient with things that are not happening. I think that was part of my problem, with the colleagues that we used to work with. I'm just going to be, because we've gone on a national roadshow to sell renewal, growth, and transformation of the sport. Now we've got to demonstrate that we are on track, in relation to that, and we can only be able to demonstrate if we test these ideas in practice. But of course, as you'll see later on, we've made quite a tremendous, commendable progress, already, in this regard. So high expectations, and as I said, support for the renewal agenda. I think overall, there is support for where we would want to go. So again, if you just look at the joint strategy session, with DSAC, I mean, that session essentially adopted, when I went through the report, essentially adopted our renewal program. Meaning that you've got now the department having adopted the directions that we would want to take, as well as the stakeholders that were part of that workshop. Again, the question then is, how do we then ensure that the potential partnerships that were discussed in that session are quickly formed? For instance, lottery, as Andy, committing to funding women in boxing. We do have a strategic framework around the development of women in boxing, a program already. Now, we've got to then say to National Lottery, here's the look at their requirements, and then say here is the proposal. Can we work on a partnership for a 3-year funding partnership around the development of women in boxing. So in other words, we must be hungry. In other words, we must be hungry. If we don't have capacity to develop these proposals, we must buy capacity. We must buy short-term capacity. We must not shy away from buying and say, so and so, can you work on this proposal for us? We'll give you 10 rands. We get the proposal and then we submit it, because we know that our investment in the development of that proposal is going to give us a good returns. And again, goodwill shown by people who were there, and these people from ESPN and so on, in terms of bolstering. We're still going to have a discussion around communications and so on, in terms of bolstering our communications and so on. You heard that being raised here. I also deal with it later on, the aspect of communications, marketing, and so on. So I do think that if you like, we've gotten the biggest part of of our stakeholders where we want them to be, but then the onus is on us doing those necessary follow-ups. Even in this area of what I term relationality. I mean, with Parliament, we used to have a very difficult relationship with Parliament, but most of you were there in the last session with Parliament. I mean, we didn't have a difficult meeting, but we've got to consolidate those relations. Provinces, I think we're owing Mpumalanga a meeting, the MEC. The MEC, Eastern Cape is now funding boxing consistently. Mandla was telling us that already for this financial year they have released 1.2 million for that boxing development fund. But they have also committed to funding some of these development workshops. So it's just the question of us making those necessary follow-ups. I was last weekend, was it last weekend? I think, yeah. I was in the Free State. The MEC there has committed to funding boxing and to even ensuring that boxing is also part of the Makofe festival. Ministry, both the minister and the deputy minister, as I was saying earlier on, we've got a very good relationship. In the previous boards, as Andy knows, we used to even struggle to have meetings with the minister and so on. We, at some point, we couldn't feel the heartbeat, of the minister. But this minister, I mean, he calls me anytime. I call him anytime. I don't hesitate to pick up the phone and call him. Deputy Minister, the same thing, our champion. But we've got to then just strengthen, those relations. But don't disappoint them as well in terms of the expectation. Media. I'm calling it a CC approach. Our relationship will always be that of being. They compliment us sometimes, and sometimes they confront us or they criticize us, and it will always be like that. You will never have a buddy approach with the media, but we've got to work on it. We've got to work on that. I'm glad that we've. A session around this. I think we've got to be just very clear, because we can trip if we're not careful in terms of how we deal with the media. But I would want us to as we deal with the media in its totality in terms of our posture, including having a policy framework, in this regard. Social media, electronic media, print media, and all kinds of media. We must then take a total view around it, but have a very clear posture, and be clear in terms of who are our chief communicators, and so on, who communicates what, and when, and so on, so that we have a very systematic and coordinated approach, and be able to reflect whether we're making a dent or not, in the media space. Are we informing ideas about boxing in the media, or we are responding to others who seek to basically occupy the media space. I think the issue of corporate, I think Kaya raised this point, business. I don't think that this is an area of weakness. Of course, it's related to the aspect of the media. It's related to the issue of the profile of boxing in the country, because people would want to be associated with something that has got a good profile. Now, if we're still working on our profile, we may then struggle. And then there's what is called influencers, but I think this thing is linked to the media as well. So I'm just reminding all of us about things that we've been able to do over the last year. I think we have successfully led a national conversation on the renewal of boxing. At least now, even the clips that I hear that some of you send me from various radio stations and so on, at least they talk about our agenda. I think for the first time in a long time, people now know what is our agenda. And that's very significant. That's a significant. You must be known for something, And then the issue of bringing boxing back to SABC. Now you'll brief us later about that, but I know that we're working towards a launch end of May. The strategic framework, Zandi, on women in boxing, as well as all the work that we have done, in this regard, that tournament, bringing in people from the media to be part of our committee. But then I think we must now be much more aggressive in the implementation of that strategy, particularly issues of development of our female licenses. And there's been in the last quarter of the last financial year a tremendous growth, in boxing activity. I don't know. I think in one weekend we had, how many was it? 4 or 5 tournaments. So I think that is really really commendable, as well as the work that we are doing as the office in promoting these tournaments. Saying there will be a tournament in KZN. We share with the South African public. Again, I think slowly but surely the national title is re-emerging. I think many many of the tournaments that have happened recently, they have had a national title battle and featuring.
And those are wars.
Yes.
Those are wars.
Yes.
Once you say South African national title, it's wars.
Wow.
I'm sure Jobe and Manda will confirm.
Oh.
There have been wars. Wherever there was a South African national title, there was a war.
Yes, yes, I've seen some of those bouts. So and remember, all of these things that I'm saying, they are in the resolutions of our last strategy session. Maybe I forgot to say that these things that I'm raising here, they are part of what we discussed in our session last year. Growth in the number of licensees. I've put a question mark there because I'm still worried about the number of boxers. But I need to be assisted, Amandla, in terms of understanding this scientifically. For instance, on average, how many fights can a boxer afford in the context of exploitation and health of a boxer? So this point is very important, and it lends me, Bedla, to another point that I think, but I'm raising this later on as one of the areas that we need to focus on. But let's note it. We are a national professional boxing regulator. We need to sophisticate our scientific understanding of the sport. Our scientific understanding of the sport. See, because the point that I'm making requires science. It requires science. Can we say can a boxer afford, I'm saying on average, 6 fights a year? What does that do to his or her health?
The regulations, if I'm correct, say not more than 6 in a year.
You see, so if that's what the regulation says, what is the basis? What is the science behind that regulation? What is the science behind that regulation? Is that regulation current scientifically? Can we go higher or can we go below? Again, when you go through literature internationally, there is a lot that is written about boxing. So there is no lack of literature, but it just requires us to give ourselves time, to understand those those aspects. Because I can tell you, our trainers, I don't think, if any, maybe it's only 2 trainers that bring in science into the training of a boxer. Which is why this Laboloiso and so on, which is why this aspect of training of our trainers, subjecting them to a particular professional training, is very important. Because if you don't do that, which is why you've got in the context of a fight, which is why the referee has got that power of stopping a fight when he sees that a particular boxer is in danger. Because sometimes you have a corner that does not throw in the towel, even though they can see that, because of the lack of the scientific understanding. That I'm really talking. So I think that aspect we need to deepen our understanding of that. I know that this may require resources and so on, but it's something that we can put in a plan over a 5-year period, maybe post the term of the sport. So that really, I mean now, as we, I mean, the level of technology in terms of, now actually even that that technology is also available for boxers. Let me use soccer. In a 90 minutes, is it 90 minutes? In a 90 minutes match, how many kilometers did Bedla run in that match. Right at the end of the match, you can be able to get that statistics. So data analytics. So I'm sure those aspects of innovation and so on, as part of continuing with that vision of or that principle of ensuring that the exploitation of a boxer, as well as his or her health, is protected. So what type of technologies can we bring into the fore, in order to avoid those things? I think I did speak about facilitating the funding of the sport in some provinces, and as I was saying, the MEC for Sport in Mpumalanga had requested to meet with us. In Limpopo, the same thing, ASWI is working on that, but Dongolo was telling me that things are becoming positive. But that, because of that, all of a sudden they've got 11 promoters, and yet for so many years they had how many? They had one or two promoter, which is why we must really, this thing of rules of entry, we must is very important. Framework for the recognition of world sanctioning bodies, that now is in place. We finalized it with UPETLA, but I think it will come to the board for formal for ratification. MOU with Sanapo, we've got that as an agenda item. So I'm glad that we're getting a progress report on the rollout of the MOU. That's exactly what I like. And by the way, Jobe, I think we can say this without any fear of contradiction. That ever since you got into that office, and of course joined by Mandla, things are really moving. We can see tremendous progress. We can see really commendable, tremendous progress, energy, follow-up, and so on. So we truly appreciate the work that you are doing together with the team. And of course, I think we can also pass this message to the rest of the staff that we appreciate the progress that we see, the movements, there is action, and so on. We truly appreciate the work that you are. There's really been a change. Hey, you don't know, but it's been a struggle. But the two of us have talked, and yourself, you did say, Chair, hey, now I see some of the things that you were talking about, Chair. At first, when I was just in the board, I was not understanding some of these things. But now that I'm in the beast of the belly, now I really understand. Because when Amandla, people think that we are just being difficult. We're frustrating people from doing their jobs. We're interfering and so on. But we are not like, at least I'm not like that. We don't want to be in operations. We are except the pensioner here. We've got our own full-time jobs. Of course, and then we abuse the pensioner. And then we abuse the pensioner and say, no, do this, run. And then, I mean, just imagine telling a pensioner to run. Yeah, and we're so privileged to have somebody like yourself as well, Pesha, who truly loves the sport, who is ready to assist anytime, who does not say no. Some of us who are younger, sometimes, I task you, then I realize, hey, I'm tasking somebody who's much, much more older than than myself, and I'm giving him an assignment. And then I say, but you should not have done that. And he takes it kindly. So that's the type of, actually, I feel so privileged, to be working with this board. It's truly a joy, and the type of unity amongst us. But then, colleagues, I then use this concept of reflexivity. This concept is about what it means. Basically, is you've got to ask yourself serious questions, particularly about some of the things that you believe in and some of the dogmas. That's what this concept is about. It's about critical reflection, seriously questioning yourself, and at some point disowning yourself, or moving away from yourself and coming back to yourself. And if all organizations were applying, truly, you can Google it. If all organizations were applying this concept, we wouldn't have the mess that we have, in the country. To be quite honest. So I'm therefore saying, all these things, but so what? So what? Which is the discussion I was beginning to start with the colleagues. So I think we need to truly examine our imagination. Yes, renewal, growth, transform, but exactly what is the type of future that we really want to see? What is our imagination of a renewed sport, of a sport that has grown, of a transformed sport of boxing? How would success look like? So I just want us to probably a little bit unthink our thinking about the futures of boxing. How would success look like? Will it be that we are number 2 again? Or is there something higher than that? So I just want us to have that reflection. What are our blind spots as this board? And as this board, what are our blind spots? We've been in office now for a year. We've just narrated things that we have done. What are those things that we could have done but we did not do? So I just want us to stretch our imagination a little bit. What is the meaning of our vision? We're saying we want to be a leading a sporting coach, in the country. What does that mean, to be a leading sporting coach, in the country? So I'm saying having done all the work that we have done, maybe we need to just think a little bit higher, if possible. I'm just challenging us. Zandi knows that we, of course, not because of a lack of a try, but we really had such high-level discussions in the previous boards for quite a number of reasons. And again, I think I can just say this. I refuse to be part of those who think that boxing people don't think. I just refuse to be. I can't be associated with an unthinking space. Mandla. No, I refuse to be associated with that. Our role is to approve tournaments, sanction tournaments, and then respond to all kinds of media queries and things like that, as if we don't have a vision, Which is why I had said at our first meeting as the board in 2021, in January, that we are sitting at the pinnacle of the sport of boxing in the country. We are sitting at the pinnacle. But we've got to then behave as such. Don't sit at the pinnacle and behave as if you're sitting at the bottom. I don't think I need to over elaborate that point. Don't sit at the pinnacle and behave as if you're sitting at the bottom. So we really want to attract into our office highly talented people who are passionate about the sport. So I spoke about this earlier on when I was talking to promoters, because sometimes the promoters, they are the most organized and vocal group in the sport. So that's why I had to give them some of our share with them some of our strategic thinking, so that they know that we are truly sitting at the pinnacle of the sport, even in terms of thinking. So I did elaborate these theories, and again, of course, I couldn't reference this thing, Dr. Ntangeni, because I had read these things long time ago, so I couldn't go back to my notes, to my notes and say, okay, who said this? But if you read sport theories, amongst others, there are these two theories. One, sport development, which is everything that we are talking about. There must be active boxing activity and so on. Boxing activity, yes, so what? That's where then this theory of sport for development, which then links sport to nation building, social cohesion, issues of social justice. Because the first one, if again you look at the definitions of transformation and transformative, again there are these two concepts are defined differently. The transformational aspect of it is about ensuring that the organizational machinery is well-oiled, is efficient, effective, things happen as they should happen. That's the definition of the transformational. But the transformative, it's about a fundamental change. So in other words, sport contributing to the fundamental change in society. That is, sport that contributes to the development of society, which is the argument I think Kaya was, a correct argument which Kaya was making. And in my view, of course, the two are complementary. We can work on this. We've got no options but to work on both, or we can choose to work on the first one as the sport, and then say, I know there's a thriving boxing activity and so on. As to what is its contribution, I'm just dreaming now. I know that next year, is it next year? When is our term coming to an end? Next year, December, maybe, or may choose to also be out of the board. I mean, it's been now I would have served for 9 years. Why are you looking down, Petla?
but the difference is that you are now the chairperson. You have a vision that you are driving. It was unlike when you were an ordinary board member. So my point is, the sport still needs you. You may not need the sport, but the sport needs the sport.
All right. I'm not opening a debate. Well, I'm looking at him as I'm saying this. His facial outlook is changing. So for instance, one of the things, Mandla, I want us to look at is the economic contribution of the sport. Because that's what the transformative is about. So we must be able to find models that are able to track the contribution of the sport to development, so that we can then be able to say, this is our contribution. That's what I mean about us sitting at the pinnacle and thinking about these things and graduating from driving sport development to sport for development. So sport for development for me is about us focusing. When we talk about boxing, we say this is the contribution of boxing to development, to the economy, and so on. Of course, we can't talk about those things if sport development, if we're failing in terms of the development of the sport. Because boxing activity and all of those things, when aggregated, will then give you this outcome that I'm talking about. But also, we must be interested in the value chains, if you like, Soren, in the value chains of the sport of boxing. Somebody must do an analysis of the value chains of the sport of boxing. I know that how many companies make boxing gloves in the country? I don't know. Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 4? Yes. Yes. So what then becomes our relationship with those two companies? The boots. Those two are very important. Let alone then the shorts and so on. But the boots and the gloves. So we've got to think about those. We've got to think about those things. And I'm sure as I'm talking, Jobe and Mandla, then what I'm talking about also talks to how our organizational structure is framed. I'm saying the theoretical framework that conceptualizes the organogram of boxing. What informs it? It must be, our organogram must be futuristic. It must be in line. It must talk. It must be congruent, to our strategic futures, as boxing. So that then, if it means we change the entire organogram, and then subject our staff members for training and so on, so that there is fitness for purpose. Because here I'm dealing with fitness of purpose, and then in terms of how we structure the organization, it must fit to the purpose of the organization. So I'm therefore saying, let's be clear about our theory of change, and I've tried to articulate this theory of change. We've got to be very clear about this theory of change, because then if we are clear about our theory of change, then our communications will be about that. We'll be at all material times, we'll be communicating that theory of change. When we grow up in politics, you knew once OR speaks, then becomes the theory of change. All of us will say that. I'm making an example about OR because I can't make an example about those that I don't know. Then all of us then communicate that. Job. That's all what we do. All of us then communicate. So now, if our theory of change is this, as I'm proposing, and what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to elaborate RGT, basically. So if then that's our theory of change, then that's what we need to do. So this complexion of what needs to be done to qualitatively renew. We've got to be very grow and transform. So we've got to really appreciate what needs to be done, the complexity, of the work that needs to be done. I therefore think that given what I said earlier on, that we just need to be much more focused and focus on what I call catalytic interventions. Now, a catalytic intervention is an intervention that, when implemented, will produce multiple results. Instead of focusing on 100 things, I think let's focus on what others call game changers. Those things that, if we have done them successfully, they will have a larger effect than doing so many things that produce less results. But then we must have, when Jobe deals with that session of sequencing and so on tomorrow, we must then say, what are these things? So all what I'm going to do now in the next few slides is to just provide a frame, if you like, around those things per each pillar. So, for instance, on the first pillar of renewal, I'm just proposing that perhaps our focus should be just on those three things. One, cultivating institutional capabilities and the architecture of boxing. Now, you may find that we will have to do probably under that 5 things. One of them is just on the area of reclaiming boxing knowledge. When we're in that workshop, in that joint strategy workshop, we then have these white colleagues, Gilberto, who come and present those stats, who have all the stats about. We don't have that information. Now, if we want information, we've got to go to these people. And yet we are in charge of the sport. You know? And you don't know their agenda as well. You know? So we must be deliberate in creating, in being the first choice for reliable knowledge about boxing in the country. It can be somebody from the private institution. You know. Now, the ratings, they are done by, what is his name now? Andre. But do you have that knowledge residing within? You don't. But it's your ratings. Huh? What is your ratings? I mean, just imagine. PSL's log and all of that, PSL knowledge being owned by somebody else. And yet they are the ones who are in charge of professional soccer in the country. So we must reclaim and develop knowledge about the sport of professional boxing in the country. So about institutional capabilities, I mean those things. I don't mean organogram. You know, I mean being able to develop this capacity so that you can then be this center that really, this professional center that is responsible for professional boxing, you know, in the country. That's what I mean about institutional capabilities, as well as then the associated architecture. Architecture including the organizational structure, but also including structures that we need to have in place. The holistic, the totality of structures, the associations for all our licensees, being clear in terms of how we want to be structured, you know, in provinces. Being aggressive about, for instance, requesting provinces to create offices, you know, for boxing, you know, all of that. So that's what I mean about institutional capabilities and architecture. It's that totality. Of course, we can expand. We can expand that. You can. These are just proposals, colleagues. Of course, as you know, I'm not dictating. These are just. And then we may have probably a more elegant phrasing of this, but I'm just saying from cradle to grave program, which basically talks about the total development of a boxer, of our athlete. And then that's where also our program with Sanabo comes in, and so on. But we then just have this. We know that our cradle to grave, because it's easy to know. It's easy to even say one of our programs is this one from cradle to grave. Then everybody knows. Then you lump in everything that you need to do around that. All these things that we are also talking about earlier, these things of benevolent funds and things like that. All those things, you then properly conceptualize your program from cradle to grave. And then the last one, the back to basics. The conversation we had with the promoters, those ABCs, the training and development, I mean, the way you'll edit the video most before it's posted on YouTube, because I must not self-censor myself. I must just be myself, not because I'm recorded. When you are recorded, you can do self-censorship. I mean, the way our officials are making mistakes, it's like they are bewitched. So I wanted to say those things. That's why I'm saying you'll edit the video. Well, the way, the type of mistakes they are committing, I was saying to Ntlanganiso, now this thing of, and I've been saying this thing of bringing boxing back on television, and yet you're bringing back a product, not a so quality product. You're bringing back to television own goal, national embarrassment. You know, national embarrassment. So the readiness program for our promoters as we go into as we take the sport back on television, readiness program for our boxers, how their posture when they are interviewed, and so on and so forth. You know, so all of those I would lump those into a back to basics. So that then you are focused. You know that we can add here, colleagues. My thought process could only produce those three. You know, but we can, of course, we can add. And then the second pillar of growth. Then again, if you go to the workshop we had, it's very instructive in terms of what we need to do on investment and resource mobilization. So we then just have focus on that. We go back to the joint workshop in terms of what some of the strategies they are proposing to deal with that. Media communication and marketing. Because media communication and marketing, we can no longer now see it as an aside or as an add-on. In sport, media communication and marketing is central. So it's something that we've got to really take seriously. And then, of course, innovation. I think we must know who writes about boxing. I'm saying intellectually, not journalists. You know, who thinks about boxing? Who thinks about boxing? Who writes about boxing? And probably also partner. If there is a university that is focused around this, we partner with them, so that we are the ones who take charge of innovations, who lead innovations, you know, around the sport. I know that at the office, I don't think we've ever thought of adding research in somebody's job description, for instance. You know, just somebody who's going to say, for instance, we've got to say, Mandla, what are the top trends internationally in boxing? Within the board, maybe twice a year, we must get that presentation of top trends in the sport internationally. What are the leading countries in terms of innovation? How do we partner with those countries around this? What are the leading boxing commissions around the world, and how do we partner with those? So that we don't just partner. You partner because you've got these weaknesses and you think that this partner of yours can help you overcome those weaknesses. So that's what I basically, because we're sitting at the pinnacle of the sport. So we can't benchmark. We can only benchmark internationally because we're sitting at a national level. So this theme, if you like, or this focus area around innovation is about that, and it also fits into all other pillars. It's a cross-cutting pillar. It fits into renewal. It fits into this one of growth. It also fits into the pillar of transformation. I don't know why. Then I've repeated this. And then the last one then is the transformation pillar of course, our women in boxing. I think I spoke earlier on about this. But again, here being able to say within women in boxing, what are the two game changers in this area? What are the two what are the 2 or 3 game changers within women in boxing? What are those things? If we do them, then this thing is just going to fly like a well-oiled whatever helicopter, if you like. And then the boxing heritage. I think I spoke about this earlier on at the start of my presentation. Reclaiming the heritage of boxing. But there are also just many other things that are happening. When you speak to people, you then realize the damage that some of our politicians do to the sport. You will go in the Eastern Cape, Mlaji, you will find that we had promised a monument. Was it a museum? You come here, Matebula, you get a call from the family that, like that, this tournament that is led to the suspension of the CFO. That thing, the family has got a particular perspective, but I asked you to deal with them about that. They thought that they were going to also benefit financially from that tournament. So now you've got that problem, and then you get a call from this other family saying there was a promise of a tombstone and so on. Yesterday I got a call from Jake's his wife, So, Bedla, we've got to really think this thing of boxing heritage carefully. But I'm not in favor of inculcating a culture of entitlement. And this is part of the discussion I had with the minister, because some of these people are sent by the minister to us. But all what I'm saying is that we've got to really think through this aspect of boxing heritage in its totality. I know that the minister wants us to play a significant role around the sports museum that he was talking about, Gilberto. So I'm just saying, let's think about what it is that we want to do in partnership with the National Heritage Council in this regard. As you know, I serve in the council, so I think you met Jobe with the National Heritage Council. Yes. So they were reporting about the fact that in the council meeting that they have met with us and so on. So potential partnerships at a provincial as well as at a national level. And of course, most importantly, that I spoke about this in terms of our theory of change, our social justice outlook. This is, in other words, the social justice outlook, of the sport, our contribution to nation building and social cohesion. So I don't have to repeat this. And then the point that I was making about the prestige of the sport, restoring the prestige of the sport, because it is seen as a critical player in the reconstruction and development, of our society. So that's what I think for me transformation ought to be about. Now I think I'm getting to the last slide. So I'm not sure whether this could be called key success factors, but my view is the task ahead of us is quite complex. So it really truly requires restless leadership, brevity and focus, and a leadership that is able to anticipate, and a leadership that is dynamic as well as imaginative. So those are just, colleagues, my thoughts. I'm not sure now about the extent to which they are helpful, in helping us reframe our vision. So therefore, we, in summary, I'm therefore suggesting that we need to just pull all of these together with your inputs into some kind of a strategic framework, for the futures of boxing. Probably a 10-year strategic framework, because we're not going to achieve all of these things in the next 3 years, in the next 5 years. Summarize these into a nice strategic framework, and bring in communicators and people like that to also nicely package these, so that when we go and meet with people, we say, these are the directions we really want to take, as Boxing South Africa. This is our focus. So that then, again, in communication speak, you turn these into your key messages. And then everybody that we engage then use, so this thing of one message, many voices. That's what you then basically, just a simple strategic framework that is not couched in the technicist government strategy formation approach, as well as APP approach. So that then, as we work on those 5-year plans and things like that, we work from this, and that's why I'm saying a strategic framework, 10-year strategic framework, not a strategic plan. So then your governmentalized approach then is influenced, by this thinking. And again, as I always say, the challenge is daunting, but we've got to really take it head on, colleagues. Thank you so much.